Y'all, so I am back in my fantasy sci-fi era and I love it. So in today's vlog, I'm going to be reading 3 fantasy and sci-fi books. And the only common denominator for these books is that 1, I already own them, and 2, they are by Black authors. You know, I really feel like I'm getting back to my roots with this vlog because I feel like what really sparked me to start this channel many years ago and what really sparked my love of reading is fantasy and sci-fi. So I'm going to read 3 books for this video. The first one is The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. I've had this on my TBR shelf for 2 or 3 years now. I kept hearing everybody rave about it, so I was like, this is the perfect vlog for me to pick it up. And this is the only fantasy book that I'll be reading for this vlog. And then the next 2 are sci-fi. So we have The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. This is another book that I think I've had on my TBR for about a year. I know I did get this from like a used bookstore, and I feel like a lot of people talked about it when it first came out and I was pretty intrigued by it, but I haven't heard anybody talk about it since. So I know this is more of a backlist type of book, but I'm glad that I'm finally getting to this in this vlog. And then I happen to have a newer release already on my shelves that I bought at the beginning of the year. And I was like, this is also a perfect time for me to pick it up. I think it also balances The Rage of Dragons and Space Between Worlds since those are more backlist. And so I picked up Chain Gang All-Stars. This is kind of like a Hunger Games, but with like prisoners fighting to the death. So we'll see. Very intrigued by this. So these are the 3 books I'm going to be reading for this vlog. And as I'm filming this now, I've already read all 3 of these. And I'm just going to say, this vlog didn't go exactly how I planned. So let's just get into it.
Afraid, emotions getting in your way. Afraid.
So I had really planned on waiting until tomorrow morning to give you guys an update on The Rage of Dragons. However, I'm really flying through this. And if I wait until tomorrow, I may be done with the book. So I wanted to come on here tonight and just give you guys an update on where I'm at and my thoughts. So this book has a lot of layers. So I'm going to give you the base synopsis, which is there are these people of Homehi who are going through a war, and the way that their hierarchy is set up is that there's nobles and then there's lessers. They all fight in the war. There is a queen that is the overall ruler. She can control dragons as part of the war. There is a group of people called the Gifted, and during war they can kind of use their minds to drag people to hell, which I know sounds crazy, but that's what it is. And so we meet this young boy Tao who is training to be a warrior. However, he's like, I'm not sure if I actually want to be a warrior after he gets caught up in the actual war when he really wasn't prepared to be. And he's like, I think I just want to get married and settle down instead of having to fight my entire life. However, an unfortunate event happens and then he starts this quest for revenge. Before we even really get to know about Tao's revenge and his really like inciting incident that drives the story forward, we're really learning about the war that these people are going through. And when I say it pops off from the very beginning, like Mr. Winters wanted us to know, like, people are fighting. They are for real at war. Like, people are fighting out here. And literally within the first 80 pages, our main character Tao gets accidentally caught up in like one of the fights. And I kid you not, one of the lines in the book, Tao is like, oh my gosh, I slipped on something. And I looked down to see what I slipped on, and it was a man's head. He slipped on a man's head. And I was like, what am I reading? But I love it. So I'm about halfway through the book right now, and Tao is currently at this like school of sorts to learn how to become a better fighter, a better warrior. And one thing that I really love about Tao is that he isn't bigger, he isn't necessarily stronger. He doesn't really have anything special about him other than his will to work, his will to get revenge. And I just love seeing a main character that is actually working to be where they're at. One of the characters is starting to be able to fight with 2 hands, and something about my inner child just came out because like I literally was getting up pretending like I was like fighting with 2 swords, and it just felt very like badass. Like even as I was reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, this character is so cool. You know, and I really literally, as I was reading, was like, yeah. And you know, sometimes you think you look cooler or better than you do when you're doing something. So I was like, yeah, of course I'm gonna get in front of the mirror and try it, because I know I look like I could be a killer right now. I look like a fool. And to be honest, it's very clear that if I was ever in a war or a battle, I'd be a goner very early on. But so far, I really feel like this is gonna at least be a 4-star. That's how it's reading for me. We'll just gotta see where it goes. So this weekend is actually my birthday, and I decided to treat myself to a little staycation here in the DFW. So I decided to stay at the Virgin Hotel, because nothing is like staying at a hotel, sleeping in a hotel bed, reading some books, and just exploring around the city. So I'm gonna take you guys along for my stay tonight. I'm only staying one night because money, but I just arrived, so I'm gonna give you guys a little hotel room tour.
Afraid, emotions getting in your way. Afraid, but why you let me fall in love if you're afraid to commit? And don't call me in the middle of the night and say that you're not able to be loved. That's not right. No, I don't wanna be that one. Still a million miles from you, so I'm gonna let you go. Oh boy, if you only knew, not a day goes by without you on my mind. You couldn't go on together. You said nothing lasts forever, though you can't deny. Hold it all inside. No, you can trust me. Just close your eyes.
Okay, so I'm back home from my staycation. You know, it really is nice just to get out of your everyday environment sometimes, but obviously I am back home now, and I did finish The Rage of Dragons this morning, and I understand the hype. So while this is called Rage of Dragons, if you are expecting to go into this book with it being really focused around dragons, you may be a little disappointed. Me, however, I didn't really have any expectations going into this, so how the dragons played into the story, I actually really enjoyed. It wasn't the main focus of the book, but it definitely said a lot about like the people involved with the dragons, the hierarchy and the war, and how the dragons played into the war. I thought it was really interesting. I will also say that there is so much fighting in this book. And you know what? I actually didn't mind it. Like, and I'm kind of surprised by that, because I'm someone in fantasy who really wants to see relationships develop, really wants to see the plot moving forward. However, Mr. Winters, he is able to move the plot forward as they are fighting. I also feel like any fantasy book where there is a kind of plot for revenge, and that's one of the motivating factors for the main character, there's always a point in time where you want to yell at the main character and be like, you're being selfish. And while that happens in almost every fantasy book that has to deal with revenge, I don't know why it just hit me a little harder in this book. And I was just so frustrated with the main character. I think it was because I expected more out of him. But I do feel like by the end, the main character did have a lot of character development. He's obviously still struggling with a lot, which I think is fair. I'm just glad that I'm excited about big books again. I'm excited about fantasy. And I'm really glad that I decided to pick this up and I didn't let it intimidate me. But overall, I'm giving this like a 4.75. Only reason it's not getting a 5 is because there was so much fighting. I'm definitely rounding up to a 5 on Goodreads, and so far, one of my favorite books of the year. And then the next book we're going to be reading is Chain Gang All-Stars. I've just heard a couple people talk about it, and it sounds like something that I'll really enjoy. This also isn't a skinny book. I mean, it's not thick. Let me just stop. It's page length doesn't matter. I think I'm going to enjoy it, but let's see.
I'll be around, yeah.
So there's a weird lighting situation happening right now, but I'm gonna make this fairly quick because I just want to give you guys an update. So I'm about 100 pages into Chain Gang All-Stars, and I really am enjoying this. You probably wouldn't know that based on the pace that I'm reading this, because it's taken me like 4 or 5 days just to get through the 100 pages. And while I'm enjoying it, I think I'm reading it so slowly because the writing is kind of dense feeling to me. But I have picked up the audiobook in hopes that I will be able to kind of get through this a little faster. I was hoping to avoid the audiobook just because recently I feel like I've been relying on audiobooks a lot to kind of get through my reading, but I think with this book, for me, it's going to be necessary. So in this book, we are in kind of like an alternate reality slash just different world where prisoners can fight for their freedom by essentially killing one another. So they're put up against each other in these battle matches. And if you win, you continue on. But to become freed, you have to survive this entire thing for 3 years. And it's something that the prisoners voluntarily sign up for. So we're following some of the prisoners inside of this program, inside of this sport. We're also kind of get perspectives of people who are adjacent to these people. So like the bus driver, one of their daughters, people who like watching the program. And these prisoners really never have time to themselves. Almost their entire life is televised. And I really enjoy books like this because it feels like this really isn't that far off from something that could happen present day, you know, which makes it a little scarier. I'm curious to see like where it's gonna go, what story it's gonna tell, even though I feel like I have an idea. If it keeps up the way that I'm feeling about it, this will definitely at least be a 4-star read for me. But like I said, hoping the audiobook will help me get through this a little quicker. So I'm about to head on a little road trip to meet my mom for breakfast. It's about an 1.5-hour drive, so I think I should be able to finish up Chain Gang All-Stars on my way there. I don't really have an update on like any of my thoughts so far because they're really still the same from the last clip. The audiobook is helping me get through this. The audiobook is really helping me understand like some of the context of how the book is written, and like the writing style to me just fits a little better in an audiobook. So I am enjoying it more that way. I'm interested to see where the story actually turns out. I feel like there's been a lot of buildup around one specific idea, and so I'm just not sure where it's gonna go quite yet, and I'm not sure how I'm gonna feel about it, but we'll see. But let's go ahead and get on the road.
Still a billion miles from you, yeah. So I'm gonna let you go.
All right, so I am back from breakfast with my mom. I love spending time with that woman. And I also went and got my eyebrows done. It's crazy how getting your eyebrows done can transform your whole face, but it was well overdue. But on my way there, I did finish Chain Gang All-Stars, and I'm giving this 4 stars. I feel like no matter who you are, you could probably get something from this book. I didn't realize until maybe about halfway through that a lot of the footnotes that were included in here were actually true facts from American history. There's things that talked about certain laws that we have, like for example, tear gas isn't allowed in war, but police can use it on crowds for protests. And so there was just a lot of American history and a lot of American laws that I unfortunately learned about, and it kind of made me a bit, I don't know if sad's the right word, but I'm not surprised, but I am disappointed. But with that being said, I feel like obviously this book had a lot to talk about with like our prison system as well. And I think just like humanity too, like how we would react to something like this and how this game kind of played on human emotion, you know, like for example, some of these prisoners would be fighting to the death, but because viewers had formed a relationship with them, they would be sad when they died, right? Or they'd be sad for a second and then they'd be like, okay, next fight. But they were able to feel some compassion for them because they watched them 24/7 during, you know, this televised show. But also because they were criminals and most of them were convicted of very serious and heinous crimes, that people also felt okay about them dying. I think there's a lot of parallels when it comes to protesting and how that can divide a lot of people. This was really well done in my opinion. I do think that there were maybe one too many POVs. However, I understand why those POVs were there. Also, I will say another reason I didn't give it a full 5 stars is because of the ending. So I usually don't enjoy like open endings at the end of books. However, I kind of wish that this one did. Like I was expecting it to kind of come to this apex of the story and then kind of just like cut it there. However, the book ended with kind of a resolution to what it was building up to, so I appreciate that, but part of me was like, dang, like did it need it? But nevertheless, I enjoyed this book. I definitely recommend it to anybody really who maybe enjoyed the Hunger Games, but maybe something that feels a little bit more realistic, something that's a little bit more dystopian in today's time. I think you would really enjoy this. And then the next and last book I'll be reading in this vlog is The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. I know this is kind of an older book. This was published in 2020. And I know that it kind of has to do with someone who can jump between like dimensions, I believe, or travel between worlds. And that's really all I need to know. So I'm about 100 pages in and I'm really enjoying this. I will say it did start off a little slow as I was trying to grasp like how this story actually works. So in this book, we are following a girl who can travel between worlds. The thing is, you can only travel to a different world if the you in that world is already dead. But it's interesting because even in like the first 50 pages of the book, we learn that our main character isn't necessarily who we think she is. And there are some clues in there where I kind of figured that out. I just hit a point where things are getting juicy. I feel like because I'm only 100 pages in and there isn't things I could have predicted, it's making me really excited for the rest of the book. And I think that almost anytime that there's like time travel or parallel worlds, there's always gonna be this feeling of like, do I actually know everything about the story, right? There's always this question, like you kind of feel like something is being hidden from you, but I love that feeling. And so another thing I think is really interesting is the relationship dynamics in here and how they change between Earths, because you have to think it's essentially like a parallel type of world where a lot of the same people exist. So when our main character is traveling, it's interesting to see how some of the relationship dynamics are different. There's also kind of like a love interest, but there's almost more than one. I don't know, it's like kind of hard to describe without giving certain things away. And also I feel like if I were trying to describe them, they would just confuse you even more if you wanted to read this book, because to be honest, I'm a little confused, but in the best way. And it's just because I don't have all of the information yet, which is perfectly fine. I think I'm actually gonna try and finish this tonight, or if I don't finish it, I want to at least read another 100 pages. I feel like no matter what, anytime I sit down to start to read, I could be the most wide awake ever, but then I sit down and I just get sleepy. And like right now, I almost fell asleep like 3 times trying to read this book, and it's only 8:55. And I know you're also probably thinking, how are you sleeping? You made coffee. It was decaf. That was my little like nighttime snack. I try not to eat now after like 8 p.m. So, you know, I had something as a light snack, but I'm not gonna lie. Your girl still wants a little snacky snack. I feel like on the weekends and like on Fridays, like all of my discipline just like goes out of the window. We'll see if I end up having a snack later on. I'm gonna try not to. But honestly, that's all I have for you guys right now. So I'm gonna continue reading. Hopefully I don't fall asleep. Hopefully water fills my tummy instead of a snack. And I'll see you soon. So I finished The Space Between Worlds, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm feeling kind of apathetic towards the book, which is really disappointing. However, I don't know if my reading slump had anything to do with my feelings towards this book. It took me about 2 weeks to read this book, and it really shouldn't have. And I'm not sure if this book caused the reading slump or if my reading slump caused my feelings towards the book. And when I say I feel apathetic, I am giving it a 3.5 stars. So I did enjoy it. I think it's a good book. I think I was just expecting a little bit more out of it. I think with any book that deals with like time travel, different worlds, alternate realities, that's already for me such an interesting premise, which I think is where like a big chunk of that 3.5 is coming from. I just feel like the execution towards the end was like missing something for me. I feel like the story really progressed and got moved forward, and the resolution happened through dialogue, which when you have something like alternate realities, you think it would be a little bit more action based, or at least that's what I was expecting. And so with the story just kind of moving along through relationships and dialogue, it just didn't land the way that I hoped. The overall resolution and ending of this book, like it all made sense, but I was really just hoping for more. I would say this is definitely a good place to start though if you are interested in like an alternate reality type of book, but you don't want something that's just like completely far-fetched or completely just like diabolical and crazy, then I would say this would be a good place to start. I think because I prefer that crazy and diabolical, this was like kind of tame in comparison. But yeah, 3.5 stars, and you know, that's not a bad rating. But overall, like this was a really successful vlog in my opinion. Rage of Dragons, I think I originally told you guys a 4.5, but I'm definitely giving this a 5 star. I think I told you guys what a 4 star, 3.5, can't remember. That tells you how long ago I filmed that clip. And then The Space Between Worlds, a 3.5. And overall, I feel like this has really helped me like hone in on some of the things that I like in sci-fi and fantasy, and honestly really has sparked my interest back in these genres, even though there was a reading slump in between there. I don't think it's the book's fault, but I'm excited to like get back into my fantasy and like sci-fi girly bag because I really did enjoy these. So if you made it to the end of this video, leave a dragon emoji or a brown emoji for the Rage of Dragons, and let me know if you're a fantasy or sci-fi reader, what's your favorite fantasy or sci-fi that you have read this year. And as always, if you made it to the end, you are my absolute favorite, my little tater tot, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.